So I'm Arif. Really a pleasure to be here in Holland. Thank you to the organizers for having us over. I wanted to start with this image because I learned about it almost a decade ago. This is Thomas Hobbes's Leviathan. The Leviathan is actually a king who represents the will of its subjects. If you actually zoom in on the Leviathan, you'll find that the Leviathan's body and the body armor is actually made up of individual people. And the reason why that is the case is because what Hobbes and some of the Enlightenment philosophers were trying to do was, how do you take an individual identity and put it within a group identity? What is that bridging mechanism? I want to make a case today that the Leviathans of today are not necessarily political states. They are the large data Leviathans, the people who have taken over a large chunk of your data, may not necessarily have given you equal rights. So I want all of us today to try and understand, if that's something you can take away from my talk, it's to understand the power dynamics of how they've acquired this amount of data, but how they've also positioned the data correctly, sometimes in your benefit, sometimes against it. And the reason why I want to underpin this presentation on Western Enlightenment philosophers is because this took a long time for them to understand. And a lot of their theories now, unfortunately, the primary one that I want to focus on is social contract theory. A lot of that, unfortunately, has been relegated to the dustbin of history. And we really need to bring it back, because without social contract theory, the individual, which is at the center of any ecosystem, will be designed out, will be taken out. And that's actually what we've seen today so far. So it starts with this, right? How many of you actually read and analyze and appreciate all of the terms of service that you sign up for any technology platform? Anybody brave enough? Okay, one lawyer. One lawyer is there. Okay. So this is by the way very difficult. It's designed that way because of certain benefits that come out, that accrue for the platforms. And your data, or all of these social contracts, are designed to capture a large part of your data. Some of the largest companies in the history of man, they were 9 times less productive than the large tech companies today, because the amount of leverage, that asymmetrical impact and power, is fundamentally coming in from your data. That's the primary reason why they are so much more productive. So if you go back down to the individual level, which is you as a person, you are a data battery, right? You are a data factory. You're generating data, going into all of these platforms ubiquitously every single day. And the data Leviathan is somebody who has integrated all of these solutions as part of their basic form. So the technology Leviathans today have done that. And it's easy to think that, okay, this happened because of the internet explosion. Everybody got data, and it was a data rush, just like, in the 1900s, there was the oil rush when oil barons went out and found oil without much regulation. But it's actually more insidious. So this is a feature called infinite scroll, okay? Infinite scroll is, if you really think about it, it's so simple. It's just you and your phone and one thumb. And if you just stay on infinite scroll, you can spend hours being stuck in the news feed, hours. But it's designed so simply, especially when you compare and contrast it to, let's say, a newspaper. Because a newspaper actually has an ending, right? But infinite scroll doesn't. And if you look at those red buttons there, the superscripts, what you'll also realize across all large technology platforms, there's sort of a visual language that's cohesive, because it already is designed to trigger your dopamine system. So my request is, if you just look at it for 5 minutes, you can start getting triggered. You'll start getting anxious just by looking at your news feed and some of these messages and notifications.
Arif, sorry to interrupt you. Can you please put your mic a little bit further?
A bit further?
Yeah,
Okay, cool.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
I'm very passionate, so it goes. So but the question is, the thing about the individual here is, because the system that they've designed here is designed to take as much data from you. So the feed that you think you're reading is actually reading you, right? The problem here is, actually they could design an alternative. They could design a system that starts with, hey, XYZ person, how much time would you like to spend in your newsfeed today? Right? It's a very simple design trick. It's not very difficult to do. but it goes fundamentally against what Jan Peter was talking about, the business model. And it goes against it because the more time you spend on feed, the more clicks, the more ads that they can serve, the more revenues. So technically, while this seems like such a simple design system, have a look around you. Right? Whether you're with your loved ones, whether you're with your friends, how many of us, our attention is monopolized by this single feature that is cutting across all of society, right? And it's probably some designer in a room somewhere that said, how can I optimize maximum for shareholder value? How can I maximize attention span? So the problem is not so much that you could, okay, now I can see myself. The problem isn't so much that, can you try and get the slides? The problem isn't so much that these systems are there. The problem is that there is a big impact if we're talking about us, we're relatively educated. But when you have ubiquitous systems like that, and you are dealing with mass number of people, and you have to deal with the lowest common denominator of society. Now this is a photo that I was on the same street that day when it happened. A lot of people know about Cambridge Analytica and the scandals, but very few people know about Comet Pizza. Comet Pizza, because I live in Washington, DC, Comet Pizza is on this street called Van Ness Avenue. And Van Ness Avenue is where I was just walking this one fine day when I heard a gunshot. And I grew up in Singapore, so we don't have guns on the street, unlike America, which is quite a unique adjustment for me. But this man, based on his newsfeed activity, based on the way that he was hooked in, decided to believe that Comet Pizza was running a pedophile ring run by Hillary Clinton supporters. So he went in, he decided to go in as the sole sort of individual, and he started shooting, right? He was then later caught, and then subsequently now I think his sentence has just been passed. But the challenge here is that the addictive behavior of that feed, keeping him inside, this photograph, this moment in political history was when we had to start confronting fake news. Before that, there was a lot of fake news, trust me. But it was here when they looked at it and realized actually some of the systems that have been designed to keep your attention and then give you fake news, that's going to cause harm to society. And it all starts again with the business model, right? We just optimize for the business model, maximum shareholder value. The outcome is something like this. So I want to just give all of you a framework today. Any technology platform that you look at, try and look at it from 3 layers. First, the data capture layer, right? The data capture layer is always going to be there, but it's going to be powered by the design. How beautiful, elegant, and deceptive is that design? Is it so intuitive that you're going to give up your data as easily as possible? Think about the cigarette, right? I don't want to talk bad about any smokers, but I used to be a smoker myself. So think about the cigarette, how easy and organic it is for you to inhale nicotine and then suffer the consequences. So you're going to look at design that is going to capture your attention, make it as effortless as possible, and then it's going to capture as much data from you, removing a lot of your agency. The second layer is where I think it gets a bit more complicated, and this is where SingularityNET is focused on. It's the algorithms. Because the algorithms that were designed by, many of the social networks were designed to create as much likes and clicks as possible. It's the algorithms that sit on top of the data that create the most sensitive layer of all, which is the layer of meaning. And meaning is the layer of meaning around society. What are the stories we tell? What do we talk about? What do we believe in? Meaning is basically monopolized today by the people who control this stack. So any platform, any large platform that can capture data at scale, that has algorithms purely designed for maximum commercial value, is going to destructively affect the layer of meaning. Make sense so far? Okay? So this is the framework that you want to look at when you think about the cycle. And just to summarize, it starts with any design that is going to be triggering your dopamine cycle. You get your data capture, you get the algorithms, and this goes on and on and on endlessly until something negative happens. Now, is there sort of an alternative? And about a year ago, I had the chance to meet with the founding team at SingularityNET, a bunch of, radicals, free thinkers, people who wanted to think about the revolution that was happening in the blockchain space and see if it would be possible to try and attack this structure, right? This was the moment of our token sale. I take the slide, it's publicly available. When we launched our project, we shared this, we shared our message and vision very loudly and clearly with a lot of people. And this was the moment all of the people who believed in our vision and mission, they said we want to be part of a new future. So blockchain technology allowed us to create our cryptocurrency, which then allows people to access and purchase algorithms on our platform. And all open source, like Jan Peter said, all publicly available so that you can have an understanding of what you're doing. So one thing that surprised me, and because I'm in marketing and also on the business side of things, and have been a part of several different communities and large companies, because blockchain technology is there and it's allowed us to create an incentive mechanism, what we've found is a lot more people have heard about us. And a lot more people have heard about us because we've incentivized them with the right behavior. So whenever we see something fantastic happening in the community, we use some of our tokens, we share the message with people, incentivize the right behaviors. So that creates sort of a viral loop that allows people to then discover this exact same message that I'm telling you about. Very, very different, because this is a sort of at the leading edge and intersection of how to build communities at scale when you understand blockchain technology. We have, of course, a famous example of Sophia. She is a humanoid robot. She's developed in close partnership with Hanson Robotics, and some of our engineers work on her algorithms as well. So we have that expertise and experience. So some of these interesting applications will also be shared with the community in the App Store. So you can have a look at the beta that is going to go live at the end of February, I believe. And you can have an understanding of how we're going to actually build it and build it out to the mass market. So this is an example I want to talk about, and this is at the data layer. So there is a startup in Indonesia called Hara, and what Hara is doing is it's trying to bring back, or trying to allow farmers, which means at the base of the pyramid, the very, very base of the pyramid in Indonesia, to participate in the data economy. It's a bit radical because, and this is why they're doing it as well, because it's a leapfrog technology. If they can get farmers to understand how their data is going to be used, actually, and it's not that difficult a challenge if you think about how microfinance sort of entered that industry as well. But if they can get farmers to understand their data, then we at SingularityNET can leverage that data and give them insights around their crops. But every time their data is moved or transacted with, they get compensated because it's part of their individual identity, their ownership. So it's a very radical approach. It's a pilot that we're doing, and I think there's some really exciting developments that could actually reshape the way we think about the base of the pyramid. So just summarizing again, data algorithms meaning, this is how we would want to aim, hopefully, for net positive on society, because that's the meaning we're going for. Otherwise, the alternatives that we're left with are going to be extremely difficult. So I think I wanted to end off on this image. The Leviathan is not something that you should be actually scared of, as long as individuals amongst us have agency. My belief, my hypothesis, although this still needs to be proven at a scalable level because blockchain has a lot of promise and potential, blockchain can allow us to create social contracts that are programmable. And that sort of agency, if we restore it back to the individual, you might just rebalance society in a way that might push it in a direction where not all the agency is captured by large tech companies. So you don't necessarily have to fear this image. You can actually be part of it and create a benevolent structure or platform that allows people to express themselves creatively. Okay? Thank you very much for listening. Yeah.